Yeah, peace, guys. Salam. Thank you all for coming. Today is 18th May 2023, and this is the correctional officer, aka babashuaib. We are here once again, away from last week. Last week I was here on TikTok, last week Thursday, and now here we are again. Thanks to God. Another day, another program. Yeah, so apart from last week Thursday, I was on Facebook, YouTube Live. Also, you can find it on my YouTube channel. Right? If you search me by the name Bush2G, you find me on YouTube channel. Right? So thank you all for coming. Salam, Jimmy, Salis, I see you. Salam, Momo Conte, I see you. Real Hustler, Topango, Ghana Shade Room, I see you. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Kindly share so other people can join. Let me see if I can share on my side here. Yeah, kindly share the link so other people can join, and I'll be giving the chance for the sectarians to hop on as well and ask their questions as usual. So kindly share. Yeah, thank you all for those sharing. Thank you. Kindly share and other people can join. That the correctional officer is on live TikTok. Yeah, thank you all for coming. This is my way. I invite God by perception. I and whoever follows me, and glory be to Allah, for I am not among the idolaters. Right? So that is me, the correctional officer. That is when it comes to religious matters, not correctional officer in terms of, police or so. Yeah, I speak about usually diverse topics, be it Islam, be it Christianity, be it anything that has to do with rationality, so far as long as religion is concerned, right? But away from the mainstream concept of religion. Yeah, what I teach people is away from the mainstream concept of religion, right? So during the week, I've been asked several questions. Rashid Ilyasu Salam. I've been asked questions during the week. Sometimes it takes more of my time to answer people by typing, so I prefer to answer them when I make a program where I can get the chance to answer them. Because I prefer explaining things verbally than to type. Usually if it is all about typing, then academically we don't need to sit in the classroom. The teacher needs to just type for us and then we can study. No. When you listen to a speech or a lecture, is way better than when you are just reading from a text, right? It takes people with exceptional intelligence to actually read a text and comprehend what is intended. But many a times the best way to study or to take a lecture is to listen and pay attention. That is the best way to get knowledge, right? So we have people, of course, who can read for themselves and understand a concept, right? I happen to be one of those who have been gifted with such abilities to read a text and then, understand what is intended. But then we have people who would rather listen to comprehend. You understand? And we have people who have been gifted also with both capacity, right? So initially, I prefer, when people ask me questions, I prefer to put it in a verbal instance where they can comprehend what is intended than to type. And when you type to people, when you write to people, the power of emotions or expression is missing, right? People will only have to assume, and that is why people can misunderstand you when you exchange text messages via WhatsApp, be it Facebook. You exchange messages, sometimes they can misunderstand what you intended. Sometimes we have people who put an emoji with a smiling face, and sometimes they don't actually know which type of smiling face they put, right? So the next person they are talking to might also take that thing out of context and then, think they are being rude or insulting or something, So that is why it's better for me to explain things, right? When people ask me questions, I prefer to explain like verbally so that they get the clear picture of what is intended. Yeah, so thank you all for coming. Okay, so I've been asked some questions during the week, right? So I prefer when I'm going to make this program, then I'll present the answers to those questions. Then people can understand what was asked. But before I answer such questions, before I move on to the program, what I want people to understand is if you are trying to interact with me, or you want to get in touch with me, and then you are asking me questions, I give an example, and you're asking me questions, and your questions have to do with multiple questions, be rest assured I will not have time to answer you. No. One, because I'm not your student. Two, because I'm not just here to serve you. That's the point. I will have people mainly, instead of them, when they ask me one question, instead of them waiting for me to answer that before going to the next question, they will keep piling up questions as if I'm in the exams hall. Look, I don't have such a life to sit down and devote my time to you single-handedly and keep answering you. I'm not getting anything from you, right? So I'll rather use my time beneficially for other purpose than to devote my time. Of course, I would love to answer people's questions, but please, when you are sending me messages or you are trying to ask me questions under my page, don't let it be a bunch of syllables. I'll skip your question. Yeah, because many of the questions you ask me, I already have the videos for it. When you ask somebody a question, wait for the answer to come first before you send the second question. But I will have people who send me a message, maybe I didn't get the chance to check their message yet, they'll add another question. Then they add another question. Then they add another question. And guess what? When I initiate to answer the first question, right, then they add another question from the first question they ask again. So in this case, you're wearing me down. You're trying to exhaust me with your questions, right? Rome was not built in a day. Don't expect to get all the answers in one day. That is the point, right? I do have answers for most of your questions. I might not have answers for all of your questions. But the point is, don't bring all the questions you have ever thought of in your life at once. That's not how it works. Academically, that's why we have grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4 till you are graduate, right? You don't just, the teacher doesn't go and take the jumbles of syllables straightforward in your head in one day. So let's exercise some patience and learn how to ask questions, right? Yeah, Ayub Ali, yeah, I know of Benjamin Ali, Benjamin Bilal, yeah. Yeah, I've seen some of his videos. He's quite interesting, but I just don't agree with him in some methods, because a lot of times he has to invent a lot of things by himself, right? Like he has some things called the lunatics of the Koran and so on. So he invents certain things. I don't agree with him, but yes, I've watched some of his videos. Anyways, peace. Creed of Abraham, I see you. Rashid Ilyasu, I see you. Salam. So that is the first point I spoke about. So I'll be putting this video hopefully on YouTube, so people who didn't get to watch me now might watch me later, right? Then secondly, do not comment off-topic kind of questions under my videos. right? If I'm teaching, let's say, if I choose a particular topic to talk about, right? If let's say I'm talking about football, please, when you want to ask me questions, let your questions be based around football. The reason is because the moment you leave that topic to start talking about, let's say, basketball, you are putting a missing link between people who actually sat down to listen to my lectures, and then you coming in whilst not being, let's say, for instance, let's say in the classroom, you not being around in the classroom for the whole period that the teacher was teaching. Then as soon as the teacher was about to come to an end, you just come in with a question which has nothing to do with the subject of today or topic of discussion. You are distracting the whole classroom, because what happens is the moment I pay attention to your question, they will be confused as to what topic was at hand at that moment. Right? This is why I have a lot of videos to answer a lot of questions. My YouTube channel is there. Like, you are not paying me for it, I'm not paying you for it. So just go there and watch. That's the point. But if you come again, whilst I've already devoted my time to teach a particular topic, and then you come again asking me questions I already have answers for, instead of inboxing me privately to ask so that I can give you the reference, people will come off topic and ask me questions regarding things which are not based on the topic, and it's a distraction. You know, so this is why many a times when I do lectures and people ask certain questions, when I go through YouTube, Facebook, and I check and people are asking questions, I skip some of the questions. The reason why I skip, it doesn't mean I don't have answers for it, but I skip them because it's a distraction. So then I'll say, okay, I'll answer you later. That's it. You understand? So learn to ask questions pertaining to the topic at hand. It is important and easier for those around to benefit a lot from what is being discussed. Today I chose the topic, Your Islam, My Islam. There's a reason why I chose this topic, because people have their own versions of Islam. Right? So the inspiration is from chapter 109, where it says, Lakum dinakum waliya deen. Right? To you is your deen, and to me is my deen. Your religion, you have your religion, I have mine. Right? Yeah, so that was the second point I have to do, right? If you have any questions, and it's not based under the topic of discussion of the same day, please inbox me with your question separately. Then I can send you the links, or if I want to send you a voicemail to answer your question, then I'll do that, right? That will be helpful. Yeah, salam, Buddhist. Now, to the question. So somebody asked me a question on my YouTube channel. Actually, when I saw the questions they asked wasn't based on the topic of the video the person asked the question. So I deleted the comment, even though I have the questions here, but I deleted it because I keep repeating, it's a distraction for those coming under the video. Whenever you see a video pasted anywhere, Facebook, TikTok, look, if there's a comment, the comment is a distraction to the video itself. So give people the chance to listen to the video first before going into the comment, because when there are comments which are off topic, it distracts the attention of a viewer or the person trying to read your comments. You understand? Because you distract them. So that is why when questions are based on topics, I leave them under my videos. When they are off topic, I can delete them. Yeah, the reasons are clear. So I go to the question which was asked during the week, and let's see how I break it down. So somebody asked, he said, babashuaib, I want to ask you some questions. Maybe you may take time and answer them when you have a live stream. So I have a live stream now, right? He says, you said you have translated the full Quran. I didn't say I have translated the full Quran. He says, you said you have translated the full Quran. It's not about saying. You're the one asking me the question. You saw it and you have a copy of it. So if you said, I said, like, your question is like you are raising doubts. Right? It's like you know somebody's married and you are telling him you said you are married. What? Don't do that. Then he says, well, my questions are, number one, which method you followed in order to translate it? Which method? First of all, your question is not clear enough. Is there any other method that you know of? If you say which method, which means you have an idea of some other methods which has been used to translate the Quran. So your question is not specific in the first place. And these are questions I would love to answer in an interview, right? In a more profound or a bigger platform where there's an interview going on. Then I can answer such a question. So it says, so your number one question wasn't specific, right? Wasn't specified enough. Number two, what makes us to be sure that there is no error in your translation? It will take somebody with extreme knowledge, or you will have to be knowledgeable than me to actually examine my book and tell me the errors. Or maybe you will have to be an intelligent person to access my book and tell me about the errors. You see the point? But if you say, what makes us to be sure that there is no error in your translation? That's not for me to answer that question. It's for you, the intelligent person reading my book, to answer that question. So that's number two question. It's not for me to answer. Number three, why do you differ from others in translation? The reason is because most of the people translating the Quran have been influenced by external sources and the hadith and then tafsirs and so on and so forth, right? And however, whilst I was translating the Quran, there was a difference between classical Arabic, there's a classic Arabic, and then the modern standard Arabic. However, the Quran deals with both. We have words whereby you want to translate, it deals with the modern standard Arabic. You need to know the basics in Arabic, right? Then, however, we have something we call timeline. I've seen some translations whereby it was not based on timeline. So that's another problem. You understand? So timeline was very significant in my way of translating the Quran. Timeline. And also I rely more on the inspiration of God to translate the Quran instead of relying on my own instincts, right? So if you are at the highest level of intelligence, you can, when you take my version of the translation, you can understand what I meant by that, right? I was able to connect the dots based on the inspiration God inspired me to do that. Number four, what made you translate the Quran? Then the person says, perhaps many Quranic translations are not accurate. Yes, that is one of the points. What really motivated you to translate the Quran? Motivation, I would say motivation. I was actually inspired to it, right? I was inspired to translate the Quran. I would say motivation. Because I started translating the Quran when I was single. At that time, I was single till I got married. Yeah. Until I had my first child, right? Until I had my second child before I got finished. So it was never an easy task, right? I was having sleepless nights. I had to, squeeze in my time. I have to plead with my family to actually give me some space or somehow, somewhere. It was never easy, right? So he says, what made you translate the Quran? That's the reason why I translate the Quran, because most translations cannot be trusted. So in order for me having such a knowledge God has given me, I was inspired to bring out a version where people can have easy connection with the words of God. So that's why we saw my translation. You saw the Quran words, Quranic words, Arabic words, and you see the translation and the transliteration, right? Yeah. So I did that to bring people closer to the words of God. That's what I did. Yeah, salam, prime and proper. Number 5. From where you looked up the meaning of some words, you have translated differently. Because what I see is this. Sometimes when I check in some verses, the way you translate some words can differ from the Quranic translators. So why is this possible? It is simple. The reason why some of the words I translated differ from certain translators, the inspiration is based on Quran chapter, I can share the screen, is based on Quran chapter 14. Let me see. Yeah. When you go to Quran chapter 14, verse 24, you start from verse 24, right? And it states, have you not seen how God cites the example of what? Of a good word, like a good tree whose root is what? Is fixed and its branches are in the sky? That's a question mark. Then verse 25, its fruit occurs all the time by the permission of what? Its Lord. And God cites the examples for the people, perhaps they will take heed. Verse 26, and the example of a bad word, like a bad what? Tree, uprooted above the ground. It has no stability. Right? Now coming back, the verses I just put on the screen, starting from chapter 14, verse 24 to verse 26, there's a clue on how to trace a good word and a bad word. A good word has a good, it's like a good tree whose root is fixed and it has stability. So the branches are in the sky. So when you trace the branch, you can trace the root because the branches are firm in the sky. They are not broken. They are there. A bad tree growing up will fall, will just be sick, and so the roots are even weak. Just same goes with the word, right? So that's why we have root word, or we have word forms. So many of the translations you see, some choices of words they use, they are influenced by external sources like hadith and tafsir. So they have stories which influence their form of translations. So it's no more about the good word anymore. Right? And the reason is, one of the inspirations mentioned in Quran, for instance, in Quran chapter 4, verse 46, right? I can share the screen, then let's see. Quran chapter 4, verse 46. Here. It says, among the Jews are those who distort words. You see, the word al-kalima, it can be the word or words, right? Then it says, out of their places. Mawadi, they distort words out of their places. Now, the only way you can distort words out of their places is if that word doesn't have a firm tree. Because when you distort it, you can confuse somebody who is not learned. A learned person knows the root word of what you're saying. But then remember, a root word of a word doesn't actually give you the direct meaning. What it does, it gives you the clue of the meaning of the word. So then it has branches. Just like when you take a tree, the tree has roots, and the root is not just one like this. The roots are like this, firm to the ground. So from the word, for those who watch a video I just made recently, I put it there. It's called the meaning of the meaning of Hajj. It's on my YouTube channel. The meaning of Hajj. You will see how I broke down how root words and word forms have different meanings, even though they come from the same root. So I'll give you an example. For instance, the word haram, it can mean unlawful or forbidden, or it can mean what? Holy or sacred, right? Pertaining. Now, even though they share the same root word, but here it can mean sacred or holy, or it can mean what? Forbidden, or something which is, forbidden or outlawed. But the reason why it can be like that, they come from the same root, but remember, root is not one. Root can be like this. So roots come in, they branch, and they have branches. Now, when you are told not to touch something, in some concept, it can be classified holy. That's why you are told not to touch. And then sometimes when you are told not to touch something, it can be in the concept of you are refrained from touching it. That's why it is forbidden. So when we have Masjid al-Haram, Bayt al-Haram, and so on, this haram is to signify sanctity. So that is why in the concept of even the Quran, you have the sectarians who tell you don't touch the holy Quran without ablution. Why? Where did God say that? You understand? But they are trying to make it holy. So in some sense, it became a forbidden thing. It has been forbidden for people to touch it without washing. But this is the sectarian point of view I'm speaking. I'm not speaking from the Quran. Quran never said, if you don't wash your hands, don't touch it. It never said so. Right? It is for those who are purified. Quran chapter 56 verse 77 to 78. You have to be purified in the soul. You are the one God is talking about. You can grasp the message of the Quran, or you can touch what is in the Quran. Right? But one of the things I came by when I watch other people's translation, what I found is they are using a bad word instead of the good word. A bad word is like a bad tree. Its roots are not fixed. A good word is like a good tree with the roots fixed and it is stabilized. So its branches can be traced in the sky. Same goes with a word. You can trace the branches and it takes you to the roots. You see how it goes? So for instance, when we take the word salah, as a verb is salah, the word form is salah. Some people will say salawa. No. A root word is supposed to give you the basics of how the word forms that you can use in a verbal form, like a verb. So in the Quran, the verb form of salah is sa-la and ya. That's the verb form. For people who are saying sa-la-wa, because they are trying to let that word come from the word wasal or silat, which can have the same branch, but they are not the same roots. You have different instances, right? And this is a topic I would love to have a dialogue, discussion with somebody who have a different view of salat. We can sit down and I'll just pinpoint the loopholes they keep creating from the external sources influenced by the hadith followers, right? So when we come to the word salah, it's a connection. You have a connection with God. So even when you are praying, when you pray, what is prayer? Prayer is an act of communicating with a deity. So even when you are praying, it's a salah, you're having a connection with God. That is why there are times for the salah. Then we have an instant connection you can have with God, not actually just praying, but you can do it through the remembrance of God. So that is why God told Musa alayhi salam in Quran chapter 20 verse 14. He says, Innani Allah la ilaha illa ana. Fa'budini wa aqimi salat li zikri. He says, establish the salat for my remembrance. So during even the remembrance of God, you have a connection with God because you don't forget God. So that is also another form of salat, right? So that's why salat, we don't limit the meaning only to say it's a prayer. So if you check most of my translations, you see the word litany, because litany has combined actual forms of worship together inside. There's an act of obeisance, there's act of praising, there's act of recitation, there's act of having a connection with God, glorification, thanksgiving, and so on. This is a combined thing altogether, right? Then we have something when we say prayer. Prayer is more like you're only communicating with God for your needs and say, God, please give me money. Oh, give me children. Oh, give me a wife. God, thank you. Then you get up and go. You understand? Now, this is actually limiting that same word to something, but it's still in the branches going to the root of the word. So these are the kind of concepts I used when I was translating the Quran. So based on the fifth question the person asked, he says, from where you looked up the meaning of some words you have translated differently. I didn't look up from a dictionary to get a different meaning. When you have a word, there is something we call in Arabic qamus. This qamus is a vocabulary, a user's knowledge of words in a particular language. So if you want to learn every language, you need to know their vocabulary. And then their vocabulary, you need to know how its words are formed. When you know the form of words, which is we call the root words, you know the forms, it will give you the branches to what branch you get words from that word. So from the branches, the context of the Quran and the subject of the Quran, the discussion should give you a clue what word is intended there. Do you see how it goes? So it's not about necessarily going to a dictionary and say, oh, I pick this meaning. I think this meaning fits. I think this meaning is okay. As some people who bring the concept of Salah will say, Salah means following closely. How do you denote that Salah means following closely? You ask them, they will say, oh, because there's a poet. There's one poem. The person writing the poem, he said, so now you are using the poem to actually denote a meaning of the words of God. When the words of God and the poetry are not the same, are not even in the same line. So this is some of the disconnections I find when people actually try to invent new meanings to words. I will say new meanings because I have the reason behind it. Right? So then he says, because what I see is this: sometimes when I check in some verses, the way you translate some words can differ from the Quranic translation. Yes, the reason why it differs because most of the translators of the Quran are being influenced by other books or external sources. Then he says, so why is this possible? So that's the possibility I just gave you. So some of your questions weren't clear enough, right? And and one thing about me, as God has enlightened me, I don't answer a question when I feel it's wrong question. I'll never answer a question. So far as it is wrong, what answer am I going to give you? Why do you give the right answer to a wrong question? Do you get my point? It's like if I don't have kids and you ask me, how are your kids doing? What am I supposed to say? They are fine or they are not fine? Both ways, the answer wouldn't make sense because I don't have kids. That's, for example, if I don't have kids. Why will I say yes, they are fine, or no, they are not fine? So the question needs to be rephrased. Then I can answer it properly. So if you're watching, I know you might watch on YouTube, you the questioner, you get to watch, you know the answer goes to you. Now, we finished with that one. So, somebody asked me a question and he says, Iblis. He says, Iblis, was he a jinn or an angel? Right? Was Iblis a jinn or an angel? If there are no questions, then I can move on, right? Aha. Now, so the question is, it says, Iblis, was he a jinn or was he an angel? Now, the direct answer to that is he was a jinn, right? He was a jinn. That's a direct answer. However, the person was asking this question because there was a confusion as to when God asked the angels to prostrate, like to do sujood. And then they did it except Iblis. So why is God trying to punish Iblis for that act? Why? If he's not an angel, why then is God accusing him of something bad? Now, there are two ways to look at this. Directly, if we take Quran chapter, I'll be coming to this. Yeah, to 41, right? 40 to 41. I take you to Quran chapter 18, verse 50. And let me put it on the screen here. Chapter 18, verse 50. And when we said to the angels, now I want you to pay attention to the word al-malaika. I want you to pay attention to al-malaika. You see, al-malaikati. Pay attention, close attention. Now, many a times we translate it as the angels, right? But when we say malaika, it comes from the word malaka. When we say malaka, it means to someone who possesses something, to own something, right? Malaka. That is malaka. To possess something, to own something, right? Malaka. Then we say malaika. That is a keeper, like we can say to own or to keep something, to be a keeper of something, right? But usually the reason why we translate it as angels, because that is mainstream, that's the basic word for it, angels. But if we are going to translate it as a title, right, they are the keepers. They are the keepers mean they are the guards. God put them to guard, not gods, guards, right? Guards as in guardian, to guide something, to guard a gate, to keep a gate, gatekeeper or something, right? So underline that word, lil malaikati. Underline such a word. So he told, now don't look at it as the angels as usually you look at it, right? So now let's assume al-malaika. Then he says prostrate before what? Adam. And they prostrated except Iblis, right? Iblis. He was of the what? Jinn, right? Or we can say he became a jinn. But because of the word mina, the mina you see here, that gives you the clue of what he came from. So he was of the jinn. Now to understand why Iblis is a jinn, I gave the reference here. You can see chapter 55 verse 15, but we will be going to that. So now God says, and when we said to the angels, prostrate before Adam, and they prostrated except Lucifer, or that is Iblis. The reason why I use Lucifer, because that it gives you the same meaning of Iblis. Somebody who is delusional, right? Can delude people, can deceive people. So that's Lucifer. So Iblis, same meaning. He was what? Of the jinn, right? So now I want you to differentiate al-jinn and differentiate al-malaika, but I'll be coming to that. So he went astray from the command of what? His Lord. Will you then take him and his descendants as allies besides me, while they are enemies to you? Wretched is the alternative of the transgressors. So it shows that Iblis is the boss of the what? The jinns. There is no one else above him. That's why God says, will you take him and his descendants? So there is no other jinn above him. So he is the boss of the jinns. You see the point? Okay, good. Then God says in 51, I, God, did not make them. Who are them? Right? Who are them? Okay, we'll come to that. I, God, did not make them witness the creation of what? The heavens and the earth, nor the creation of themselves, nor did I take the misleaders in support. Right? Now, the reason why I said there are two ways to look at it. There are two ways. When God says, I did not make. Now, if you check here, coming from above here, he spoke about, will you then take him and his descendants as allies besides me? So the them mentioned here has to do with Iblis and his descendants, right? So I did not make them witness the creation of the what? Of the heavens and the earth, nor the creation of themselves, nor did I take the misleaders in support. Now, I gave a reference here, chapter 55, verse 15. Let's go and see that chapter. That is Surah Rahman, right? Chapter 55, verse 15. And he created the jinn from the flame of fire. You see where the jinn was created from? God created the jinn. That is al-jannah. That is one jinn. Just one. That is Iblis. Only one. He was created from the flame of what? Fire. That's how God created the jinn. But Iblis himself didn't witness how he was created. Right? Okay. So apart from that, I take you chapter 15, verse 27. Right? Yeah, Salam Abdul Samad. I see you. Chapter 15, verse 27. As for the jinn, we created him earlier meaning God created him before he created the human being. If you want to know that, read verse 26 above. And we suddenly created the human being, insana, from what? Agile of an aged mad. Then verse 27, as for the jinn, we created him. Now the jinn, you can see God said al-janna. It's talking about one jinn, not two, not three, one. Al-janna, which is Iblis. We created him earlier from what? The hot flame of fire. So he comes from the flame of fire. Right? Okay. Now we see where the Iblis come from. We have seen where Iblis come from, right? Salam, the great, you're welcome. So clearly when we see from the Quran, God is telling us Iblis is a jinn, or was a jinn, right? It's a jinn. But now what I want you to understand, the confusion people are having is the al-malaika. When we say malaika, when we translate it literally, we are going to talk about the keepers, or people like entities who are keeping something, who are owning or possessing something. So the keepers, when we translate it as the keepers, the angels are the one keeping us, we the human beings. They are keeping you till the day you die. They are guarding everything. God put them there as malaika, the keepers. Do you understand the point? Now let's not look at the word malaika as angels anymore. I'm just giving you an example. Let's not look at it as angels. Let's look at it as titles. Keepers. So they are keeping everything. God made them to keep even the paradise. They are the gatekeepers. Hell, they will be the gatekeepers. Human beings, they are the one keeping us. You mention everything. They are the keepers. Malaika. Malaik. So it goes like that. Now, this is where the confusion comes in. I'm going to take you to Quran chapter 17, chapter 7, verse 11. That's where the confusion comes in. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And I share the screen here. Now, when you read chapter 7, verse 11, God says, and we certainly created you, the human being, and formed you, that is you, the human beings, and then we said to the angels. Now, let's not look at the word al-malaika as angels. Let's look at it as keepers. We said to the keepers, prostrate or show submission to what? To Adam. So they showed their submission to Adam, except Iblis. He was not of those who showed submission. Don't look at the word malaika as angels. Just look at it as keepers. The keepers. Now let's go. Verse 12. He, God, said, what prevented you? Now you see here, manaka is talking to Iblis directly. What prevented you to not show submission or prostrate when I commanded you, Iblis? He, Iblis, Lucifer, he said, I am better than him. Now, let's go. Let's examine this part. When we check from verse 11, how is it that God commanded Iblis? How? You can only understand he commanded Iblis if you don't look at the word malaika as angels. If you look at it as keepers, then you understand. Now, somebody will say, oh, God mentioned angels. Why are we saying the jinn? Look. Ruhu, the word ruhu, spirit. Spirit. The angels can be classified as spirit at the same time. And God spoke about tanazzalul malaikatu wa ruhu fiha. When he mentioned the malaika, he sometimes separates the spirit from the malaika. He mentioned the ruhu separate from the malaika. And I'm going to give you examples to that. Now, concerning whoever has read the story of Maryam, chapter 19, right? And then when you read chapter 3 concerning Maryam, in some instances, God spoke about Maryam, the angels coming to the Maryam. So I'm going to give you the example. We will come back to chapter 7, verse 11. I'm going to help you to understand this. So let me take you to Quran chapter 19 and let's see verse 16, right? Now, from chapter 19 verse 16, when you read about Maryam, right, and mentioned in the book is what was Maryam, or is Maryam, when she retreated from her family to an eastern location, and she took a partition other than them. Then we sent our spirit. You see here, our spirit to her. You see, God says our spirit. He didn't say our angel. But I will give you the clue as to what that spirit is, or who that spirit is. To her, and it appeared to her as a normal human being. So we can see here a spirit appearing to Maryam as a normal human being. So a spirit can become a human being, right? Can take the form of a human being, right? Just like Iblis was created from the flame of fire, but he became what? A jinn. Just like he can be among the keepers, but then still becomes a jinn. So just like an angel or the keeper can be a keeper, but he can be a spirit or can take another form. I want you to see it in this angle. So before I start explaining this, I say you can look at this from two angles. So chapter 19 verse 17, it's telling you we sent our spirit to her, right? So now you see. So now I'm going to take you to a similar instance in Quran chapter 3 verse 40. Al Imran, sorry, chapter 3, sorry. Chapter 3 verse 40. Yeah. Is it 40? Yeah. Let's start from 40. He's a career son. Lord, how can okay? Let's not that. Let's start from let's start from 342. And when the angels, now you see the word al-malaikatu. I said don't look at it as angels, just look at it as the keepers. So when the keepers said, "Oh Maryam, indeed God has chosen you and purified you and has chosen you over the women of the world," right? Verse 43, "Oh Maryam, be obedient to your Lord and show submission, or prostrate and bow down with those who bow down," right? Then it goes, "That is from the news of the unseen, which we inspire to you," right? Telling Prophet Muhammad about this, right? Now, but coming here, you see God mentioned the angels speaking to Maryam. Remember, whenever the spirit is coming down, tanazzalul malaikatu wa ruhu fiha, the spirit comes down with the what? Together with the what? The keepers. The keepers and the ruhu, they come down together for every command. That is Quran chapter 97. When you read from verse 1 to verse 5, you will see how the spirit comes down. He comes down together with the keepers. So I say don't look at the word malaika as angels. Angels is just the literal simplified meaning of the word malaika that we all know, right? But when you look at it deeply, the reason why God was telling Iblis, what prevented you when I commanded you? Because when you will look at the word malaika as the keepers, yes, Iblis can be part of them. But the moment he acted against the will of God, then God took him away from their position, out of them. So now he went and formed his own descendants, his own group. So he was away from the main keepers, whom initially he as a jinn was part of them. But then they took him out of the keeper's position. Just like in the police officer group. I give an example. When you take police, generally police officers. Among police officers, we have sergeant, we have detective, we understand, we have corporal, and so on and so forth. There are different positions in the police academy. Right? There are different positions in police academy, but they are all police officers. And then we can have what we call the CIA, FBI. They all go under what we call police, right? Because they deal with the policy. Now, what I'm saying is the reason why God differentiated the keepers from the jinns. I'll tell you why. It is because of what Iblis did. So he was demoted away from that position. So that is why we don't classify him part of the the keepers anymore. That is what we call malaika. So now let's go back to chapter 7 verse 11. So that you understand. If you don't understand now, when you watch the playback later on YouTube, you understand what I mean. So I put it on the screen. Chapter 7 verse 11. And we suddenly created you, the people, and formed you, the people, and then we said to the malaika, that is the keepers, prostrate or show submission to Adam. So they showed submission except Iblis. So God said to the what? The keepers, the malaika, they all did except Iblis. Now if you look at the word malaika in the form of the keepers, then we can add Iblis there. But when you are just looking at it as angels, then you cannot put Iblis part of them. You confuse everything there. But in order for verse 12 to make sense, look at the word malaika as the keepers. Iblis was part of them. He was part of the keepers. Right? So he was not of those who prostrated, who showed submission. Why? Let's check verse 12. He, God, said, what prevented you, manaka? God is talking to him directly here. What prevented you to not show submission or prostrate when I commanded you? So now, if we don't look at it critically, we will say, where did God command him? You understand? If we don't look at it critically, as Quran chapter 38 verse 29 is encouraging us, Kitabun anzalnahu mubarakun liyadabbaru ayatihi waliyatazakkar ulul albab. We have to reflect on the verses critically to get the concept. So that is why certain translations, if you don't actually go in depth, you can get confused from that. So he, God, said, what prevented you to not show your submission when I commanded you? But when we go to verse 11, if we are just going to look at the word malaika as angels, then we are not going to add Iblis there. But when we look at it literally, we go deep down the meaning of the word and we see the keepers. Then we can add Iblis there. Then verse 12 can make sense. So now verse 12. He, Iblis, said, I am better than him. He didn't say, oh, I'm not part of the keepers. He never said that. He would have said, I'm not part of the keepers. But he said, I'm better than him. So which shows that he acknowledged that God actually commanded him in verse 11. He was part of the group, which is called the keepers. Explain it again, and that is why we always have angels around. They are the ones going to guard the hell. They are the ones going to guard the paradise. They are the ones guarding human beings. They are the ones going to take your soul. They are the ones who watch over you. You understand? They are the ones who write everything you do. They are the ones going to present your records on the day of judgment. That's why they are called the keepers. Al-Malaikati. So Iblis was demoted from that position, and that is why people try to call him the fallen angel. So it is the word angel that is confusing people. I hope you get my point. Okay, so let's finish the verse. Then he says, I am better than him. You created me from fire and created him from what? Clay. You see? So now, to end this by giving you the perfect clue to understand the logic I was giving here. If you go to Quran chapter 22 verse 75, this is what God says. God chooses messengers from the keepers. I don't want to say angels. Some people will get confused. There's a reason why I translated this as angels, because that is the mainstream concept of understanding. But when you look at it critically, you get to understand what I mean. So from the keepers and what? And from the people. Indeed, God is hearing and seeing. Now, if God is only going to choose from the word angels, let's limit the meaning to angels. If you check my translation, you see that I underline the word angels. I underline it. The reason why I underline it is for you to pay attention. Now, the point is, the Ruhul Qudus, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, or the trustworthy Spirit, is he part of the messengers? The answer is yes. So are we going to say he's not part of the angels, the keepers? We cannot say he's not part of the keepers. The Ruhu. Why does God call him Ruhul Qudus or Jibril or Mikael? They are part of the keepers. But the point is, their position is a bit different from the ordinary keepers, which shows that you can be elevated from the position you have, but they are all messengers acting in the form of messengers. So that is why I took you to Quran chapter 19 verse 16 concerning Maryam, when God sent to her the Spirit. So the Spirit is also a messenger, because he was part of the keepers. So he came as in the form of a human being. I hope you are getting my point. Yeah, salam, brother Hafiz Isaga. Do you get my point? So to top it all, let me take you to this Quran chapter 12 concerning Joseph, when people call him an angel. That is Surah to Yusuf, Surah of Joseph, chapter 12, verse 31. Here. And when she heard of their scheming, that is concerning Joseph, when the wife of Aziz arranged for women to come and see him, she sent for them and prepared couches for them, and then gave each one of them a knife, and said, Joseph, come out for them. And when they saw him, they magnified him and slit their hands, and said, a round up for God. This is not a human. This is just a noble angel. A noble angel. Now this is where the concept of the mainstream word angel comes from. The malakun, angel. But when you look at the word itself, the root word, as I say, root word can also have, widespread roots, just like a tree. When you try to unearth a tree from the ground, you can see the root is very firm and the roots have strings going sideways, right? So now, the word malakun, we all know the angels are the keepers. They are the gatekeepers. They are the everything. But then when we break down the meaning itself to keepers, we can understand. In this position, we don't say a noble keeper. It will confuse everybody. So that's why it's translated the noble angel. So, but that's what people said. They think he's an angel, even though I don't know if they have seen an angel before, right? And even in the modern day, we describe handsome person or a beautiful lady as angel. Like somebody who say, oh wow, you look like an angel, you are so beautiful. You understand? So that is the concept of imaginations people have. But anyways, what I just explained might be a broad topic later on. When you rewatch, you get to understand the concepts I was explaining. Now, the only reason why Iblis can be classified as a keeper previously is because of the position he had among the keepers, even though he was still a jinn, but he had among the keepers. So to summarize this topic, now I'm going to take you to Quran chapter 34, verse 40 to verse 41. Here. And the day he will assemble them all, then he will say to the keepers, Lil Malaikati, you see I've underlined it. Lil Malaikati, have these, that is the people, been worshipping you? These people, have these been worshipping you, the keepers? You know, people who say they have guardian angels and they are worshipping them and so on, right? So God is now asking the question, have these been worshipping you? Verse 41, they, the keepers, that is the angels, will say, glory be to you. You are our ally besides them. Rather, they were worshipping what? The jinn. That is al-jinnah. They were worshipping the jinn. Most of them were believers in them. So that is why people mistaking jinns for the angels. But because the angels are keepers, and the jinns used to have someone among them who was in that position, and he was demoted as a keeper. You understand? So this is where the confusion arises. So on the day of judgment, this concept will be clear for the people, and God will differentiate that. We'll say, no, it wasn't angels they were worshipping, but rather they were worshipping the jinns. Do you see the point? Okay. So that is another question I answered from a brother who asked me on Instagram. I hope hopefully he gets to watch it on YouTube. I'll put it there. He will get the answer of his question that he asked. So far I've done 1 hour 10 minutes, and let me see, is there anything else I need to address? Okay, yeah. Oh, I just remembered this brother Hafiz Saga, right? I think you asked me certain questions. I sent you some links. I don't know if you were able to watch. I don't even remember if I finished answering your question. But so this is one of the points I was saying earlier, that when you send me questions, kindly send me one at a time. When you send one, wait for the answer before you send the second question. I know sometimes you are desperate to need answers, but kindly write them down on your own notepad or jotter, so that when I answer them step by step, it's easier. When they are too much, it's a burden for me. Do you get the point? So, ladies and gentlemen, bring in your questions before I go. A video just came to my mind. Yeah, salam, Balo World. You're welcome. The point, I had a video in mind. Let me see if I can put it here, maybe. Here's the scholars, the mixed. Yeah, this one. I can put it.
Produce your proof in kuntum sadiqin, but if you're truthful. Any scholar, therefore what I say, that what Dr. Zakir Naik says in Islam is zero. No value. What Allah says carry weight. Any person, any scholar, sister, says anything, ask for proof. Allah says in Surah Baqarah chapter 2 verse 111, Qul hatu bunanakum, produce your proof in kuntum sadiqin, but if you're truthful. Any scholar, therefore what I say, that what Dr. Zakir Naik says in Islam is zero. No value. What Allah says carry weight. Any person, any scholar, sister, says anything, ask for proof. Allah says in Surah Baqarah chapter 2 verse 111, Qul hatu bunanakum, produce your proof in kuntum sadiqin, but if you're truthful. Any scholar, therefore what I say, that what Dr. Zakir Naik says in Islam is zero. No value. What Allah says carry weight.
Yeah. Now, Zakir Naik says, he was answering somebody's question, and he says, any scholar says anything, ask for proof. What he, Zakir Naik, says in Islam is zero. What God says, carry that one. And there's a reference he gave in Quran chapter 2 verse 111, where you say, where you tell people, hatu bur'anakum. When people make a claim, just ask them, bring your proof. Now, bring your proof seals an argument. It ends an argument, right? The reason why you ask people for proof is not sometimes to argue. It's just to silence the argument. If the people are saying things and they cannot prove it, don't waste time arguing. Proof gives the proof brings out the veracity of the claim, right? So it is very essential to ask for proof when you are dealing with people. Moditi says, Surah Baqarah 58, how walk inside the house when prostrated. You have my translation, right? Check it. Does it say prostrated there? Like, this is the problem with people. Sometimes you take words and then you think every word you see means the same thing. No. One word has multiple meanings. Sometimes you have to check. Let me put it here. He says, Quran chapter 2 verse 58. I put it on the screen. Quran chapter 2 verse 58, and when we said, enter this town and eat from wherever you desire in comfort, that is ragadan, and enter the gate in obeisance, sujadan, in obeisance, that's why you see underlined, in obeisance, and say, relieved, we will forgive you your mistakes and we will augment those who are benevolent, right? Now the mistake people do is some people think always when you see sujood or sujadan or anything regarding, it has to be the same meaning always. Those are people who have little knowledge on how vocabularies and language works, right? They have no in-depth knowledge on how to break down words. So they think basically you just take a word and you think, oh, it always means the same thing. That is a shallow way of thinking. Now the word obeisance. Now, when we say obeisance, we are talking about the act of showing your submission, right? In obeisance. In obeisance doesn't naturally mean you are doing it physically, like putting your head down or bowing down. No. In obeisance means to show your submission to the instruction you have been given. And then they are being told to say and say, relieved. Meaning we are relieved, right? So that is a concept. It is not actually telling you put your head down on the ground and walk like this. Go in. God is not talking to fools anyway. Remember, the words of God are meant for the intelligent ones to act on. So when people don't understand, they try to translate things literally, and then it makes them look stupid when they do that, right? So that is actually the point. Yeah. So coming back to what Zakir Naik said, when people make a claim, when people say anything, ask for proof. You're asking for proof based on the claims they are making. If babashuaib, I say something and you don't understand me, ask me for proof. Then I have to prove it, right? And sometimes you can be given the proof, but it might take you time to understand. So certain proofs, just take it and go and study for yourself for a while. Then you can understand. Because Quran encourages people, that Quran chapter 17 verse 36, it says, وَلَا تَخَفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. You don't have knowledge about something, don't practice it, don't do it. Keep studying till you have acquired enough knowledge to follow. Right? That's the best way to follow. Yeah. Yeah, so somebody's asking a question. Monity says, I have a question about Salat of Shuaib in Surah Hud 87. No problem. Chapter 11 verse 87. Let me help out. Chapter 11 verse 87. Let's see. 11 verse 87. It says, they said, they the people of Shuaib says, oh Shuaib, does your as-salatuka. Now this alif in front here is a question, right? And then you see the swad, lam, and then the wa. And then tuka here, you here. Now this is written differently from the way the salat itself is written, right? From establishing the salat itself is written, and I'll give you some example. Now here the act of communication, right? There's your communication, and same goes in chapter 9 verse 103. We'll be going there because the act of communication with them, he brings them like to communicate with them with the words of God, right? So does your communication suggest you that we should leave what our fathers worshipped, or we should not do with our world what we want? Indeed, you are clement and sensible, right? He Shuaib said, O my people, have you considered whether I am upon a proof from my Lord, and has provided me good sustenance from him? I do not intend to conflict with you for what I have forbidden you. I only desire as much as I can, and my success is only what? By God. On him I have relied, and to him I repent. Now, coming back to the salat mentioned here, it's a different type of salat altogether. Like I keep saying, even though they come from the same root word, doesn't mean they are the same thing, regardless of the root word. Now, see how this salat, as salatuka, is written. We are going to Quran chapter 9, verse 103. Now when you go to 103, it's talking about the Prophet Muhammad himself. So God told him, take alms from their wealth and to purify them and vindicate them by it, by the alms they give, right? And reach out to them. Now reaching out to them here is an act of communication with them, to have a connection with them, to communicate with them, right? Indeed, your communication, this salataka, look at the spelling here. Salataka. Now this is the root word salawa. This one, this salat you see here, the root word is salawa. This wa is to give you the clue of the roots of the word. This is where this salat, this act of communication is different from the one we establish as a salat with God. So this salah comes from the word salawa. Now this is different. I will show you the example. So this is the act of communication, just like Shuaib was also taught. So now reach out to them as an act of communication. Indeed, your communication is what? Is calm for them. And God is hearing and omniscient. So this salat, check how it's written. The root word is salawa, which is an act of communicating, right? To reach out. Now, when we talking about establishing salat, as God told Musa alayhi salam, I take you to Quran chapter 20 verse 14. And then you check clearly how it is written. Here, when God says as-salat, here as-salata, when you take here, we are establishing this salat as a form of communication with God, right? So indeed, I am the God, there is no God except me. So worship me and establish the salat, the litany, for my remembrance, right? Now check when it's written on its own without the definite article. So for instance, I take you to Quran chapter 23. Chapter 23, let's say verse now this is in the plural form. Wait, which verse can I take you? Chapter 8 verse 35. Yeah, let me take you. Chapter 8 verse 35. Now when you take this, you can see وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ. This, look at how the salat is written. This salatuhum here, and their litany salatuhum. This salat, you see how it's written. You don't see any wa inside here, right? No wa here. Okay. Again, when I take you to Quran chapter 24 verse 41, talking about the birds, right? Here, when you check what is written concerning the birds, you see alima salatahu. You see salatahu. You don't see any wa here. Now, let me take you to the basic form. Quran chapter 96. And then I take you to verse is it verse 10? Yeah. It says Ara'ayta allazi yanha abadan iza salla. So this salla here, you see, it gives you the clue. You see the alif madda here, and this is the swad, the lam, and the ya. Now this is the verb form number 2 in Arabic. Understanding the structure of Arabic language, this is the verb form number 2. That's why it has the shadda. Now without the shadda, we will say salah. Salah becomes the root word, right? It's just trilateral root word. So salah without the shadda, because the shadda makes it become the verb form number 2, right? Now without that, this is what we call salah. Now this salah, the root word is swala and ya, right? Swala and ya. Now, this is the one God is actually commanding us to establish that connection with Him. But then, like I keep saying, even though they will share the same root word, doesn't mean they are the same thing. You just need to understand the context in which they appear so that you know what is being discussed there. So when God says establish as salah, it becomes a definite article. So you go and check the command of how God instructed the prophets. When Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he told God, Rabbi ja'alni muqima salati wa min zuriyati rabbana wa taqabbal du'a. That is Quran chapter 14, verse 40. I can share the screen here. Chapter 14, verse 40. He says, Lord, make me an establisher of the what? The salat. And of my offspring, our Lord. So accept my invocation, right? Our Lord, forgive me and my parents as well as what? The believers on the day the reckoning will take place. So the question the brother was asking concerning chapter 11 verse 87, right? Chapter 11 verse 87. The salat these people were talking to Shuaib about was the act of communicating with them. It is not like establishing the as-salat. They will have used a definite article to ask him that question. Does the salat you establish, does the salat you establish command you this. But they didn't use the word you establish there. Whenever God wants us to establish the salat, He mentioned Akim is salat. It goes with the establishment. But when you come to the notion of chapter 9 verse 103 and Quran chapter 11 verse 87, the notion of the salat mentioned there is the act of reaching out to people, the act of communicating with people, right? That is not the form of establishing as God instructed Musa alayhi salam. So there's a difference on understanding such words. Yeah, thank you very much, Balu World. Shidad bin Af, yeah, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, I've done 1 hour 36 minutes. Started to get tired. Like I said, I will be on Facebook, YouTube Live on Saturday, right? So make it a point. If you don't have my Facebook, I'm still using the same name, the Correctional Officer, babashuaib. You find me all the platforms, TikTok, YouTube. Let me see. Can I put it here? No, I don't have it. You'll find me all the platforms like YouTube, and I also am on. You find me on Spotify. Where do you find me? Bush Tujin. I'm on Spotify. I put my podcast there, so I'll be uploading more podcasts. So you'll see a lot of my the monologues I had. You get to listen there. Yeah, Monetist says Surah Nazia, chapter 79, verse 18. Please, last question. Okay, let me see. Yeah, Tujis, I'll come to your question also. Mileri. Yeah, and then Mohammed Patel, I come to your question, then I end, right? So let's take Quran chapter 79, verse 18 first. Chapter 79 verse 18, and it says, and say, would you like to be purified? This is Musa alayhi salam sent to Pharaoh, right? So God told him, go to Pharaoh, indeed he has transgressed, right? And say, would you like to be purified? Then verse 19, and I will lead you to your Lord, so you would fear. If you want to be purified, it's not talking about using water to purify yourself. When you talk about purity, it's to purify your soul from corruption. So let's see the example. If I take you to Quran chapter 91, chapter 91 verse 7. So God says, وَالنَّفْسُ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا, and the soul and what organized it. Right? فَالْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, and inspired it with its immorality and its piousness. Then he says what? Qad afla man zakkaha. Whoever purifies it has succeeded. So the notion of the soul is for you to purify the soul, right? From any corruption or anything. You purify it. So we go to the next verse, verse 10. And whoever inflicts it has failed. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاءَ. So the notion of Musa alayhi salam going to Pharaoh was to invite him to the course where he can purify his soul. That was the invite. It wasn't about washing or giving money for zakat or something. No. Right? It's not about giving money. It's about to purify your soul. Just like God talks about the Quran, La yamassu illa al-mutahharun. It is mentioned in the Quran, chapter 56, verse 77, where it says, indeed it's a noble Quran in a protected book. Then it says, none will grasp it except the purified. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. Right? Mutahharun, to purify. But when we say tazakka in the sense of inviting Pharaoh in chapter 79 verse 18, it is a notion of showing him how to purify his soul from any evil deed he has intended. Right? Yeah, monetist, I understand your question. Don't worry. We go to the next question, which is Bileri says, is it possible to explain to us 72 verse 9? Choose chapter 72 verse 9. That is Surah Al Jinn. And that we used to be seated in seats to listen therefrom. They used to go up to the sky, right? To listen. They go to the space and listen. Right therefrom. But whoever listens now will find for himself a surveillance meteor. That is why you see the comets flying in the sky. In the night you see something flying like a star. It's not a star. It's a comet. It's a what we call shihaba. This shihaba is what we call a meteor. Right? A meteor, we are talking about any of the small solid extra terrestrial bodies that hits the earth atmosphere, right? It is like a light, a streak of light in the sky at night. You see it's flying. So they will be chased with that when they try to go up and listen something, right? So that is the main point. And it's not talking about stars. It's talking about the jinns. They go to the sky. They have places where they can go to actually stay to listen, right? But now they will be chased away. They can't do that. So they used to do that, right? They used to be allowed to do that, but not anymore because of their evil deeds, right? So, Milari, that's your answer to that question. Then I take the last question. Yeah, Salam, Governor. The last question is Muhammad Patal, Surah 4, verse 3. It says it's about orphans, right? Let's check what the verse says. That's Quran chapter 4, verse 3. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me do this. Chapter 4, verse 3. I put the verse big enough. Verse 3. Here. Now, in order to understand verse 3, you're welcome, monetist. Salam, Isaac Muhammad. Yeah, monetist, thank you. So, in order to understand verse 3, let me read verse 3 first, then you understand the concept. Verse 3, and if you fear that you cannot be equitable regarding what? The orphans, yatama, then marry whoever pleases you among the women. Which women? We are going to find out. You see the women, that's the title of the chapter, right? And Nisa. Then God says by twos, by threes, and by what? Fours. But if you fear that you cannot act justly, then what? One, or those your right hands possess, right? That is what? That is the least that you will not deviate. Okay. Now, in order to understand verse 3, you have to start from verse 2, right? If you start from verse 2, it says, and give the orphans their properties, and do not what? Exchange the bad for the good, nor shall you what? Consume their properties into your properties. Indeed, it is a great sin. Now, I want you to understand verse 1. Verse 1, when you take the word arham here, many times you see the people translating it as the wombs, right? It can mean the wombs in plural form, but in this context, it is not about the womb. It's about the kinship. It's a family issue. Property is always related with family. That is why the chapter itself is about legal will. It's about properties, the legal will, sharing of testament. So here the Al-Arham mentioned is about the will. That's why God started by saying, oh, you mankind, reference your Lord, the one who created you from one soul, and created its mate from it, and transmitted from both of them many men and women. So beware of God, whom you ask about, as well as the kinships, because you want to know your genealogy, where you come from, the family lineage you come from. It's all about kinship, your family, right? Who are you related to? That is the only way you can get your property or something meant to be given to you. So when we say kinship, a close connection marked by community of interest or similarity in nature or character, or we can say relatedness or connection by blood or marriage or adoption. That is the kinship. So the Al-Arham mentioned in that chapter 4 verse 1 is concerning the kinships. I will see some people translate it and they say, oh, the wombs. The wombs what? Who are you going to ask about the wombs? Wombs of who? Which women? Now you go to verse 2. Then now it tells us about that, and give the orphans their properties, because mainly, usually, your uncle is the one holding your property, or one of your relative or a family member holding your property, because when your father is dying, maybe he handed over to a family member to take care of you. That is why I say beware of the what? The family members, also the kinship. Just a minute. Yeah. So, and give the orphans their properties, and do not what? Exchange the bad for the good, nor shall you what? Consume your properties into your properties. Indeed, it is a great sin. Right? Now, so when you go to verse 3, then now it's going to make sense to you. And if you fear that you cannot be equitable regarding the orphans, because God says give the orphans their properties, but now you are scared, you think you cannot do it, right? You're scared, you think you cannot do it the way God asked you to do. Then now what you have to do is then marry whoever pleases you among the women. Now you can see a definite article mentioned, and nisa'i. It's not talking about any other ordinary woman. We are talking about the context about orphans. Right? So there can be an orphan woman. And when we say woman, we are talking about an adult female. Right? An adult female can be an orphan. Right? So now when you take the women, if you want to understand the concept here, the one God is asking you to marry, go to chapter 4 verse 127. The same chapter, you go to 127. Right? So we will come back to verse 3 to understand what was said. So Quran chapter 4 verse 127. And they seek your legal opinion, that is your fatwa, right, concerning their women and nisa. God says when they seek your legal opinion concerning the women, then God says, say God opines you concerning them, and what has what? Been recited to you in the book regarding the orphaned women. Do you see it? Regarding the orphaned, yatama, and nisa'i. You see it? Adult females. Right? Those are the ones God is saying you can marry 2, 3, and 4s. Because their properties, or maybe their uncles and their fathers and their mothers have left them properties, and it is under your care. And you think you fear that you cannot be just with their properties. So when you marry them, you will use their own properties to take care of them. So here, God says, God opines you concerning them and what has been recited to you in the book regarding the orphaned women, whom you did not give what was decreed for them, and you wished to marry them. These same orphaned women, you want to marry them, right? Then he says, as well as the oppressed among children, and what? That you should stand for the orphans in justice. And whatever you do of good, then indeed God is aware of it. Right? So now we go back to verse 3. Now, so the verse 3 God is talking about, it is not talking about, let's say, go and just marry ordinary women out there. It's talking about the orphaned women. That's the one God says you can marry them. Oh, sorry. Let me see. Can I do this fast and go up? Yeah, verse 3. Chapter 4, verse 3. And if you fear that you cannot be equitable regarding the orphans, you see, then marry whoever pleases you among the women. This women talking about the orphaned women. It's not talking about ordinary women. Do you see the point? It's not about ordinary women in this context of the chapter. This chapter is based on talking about the women, but it has to do with sharing the properties concerning orphaned women. That's why I say when you connect verse 2 to verse 3, it will make sense to you. Now verse 3 is telling you, then marry whoever pleases you among the women. Which women? The orphaned women. If you go to Koran chapter 4 verse 127, you understand which women God is talking about. So he said you can marry 2s, 3s, or 4s. But if you fear that you cannot act justly, and according to God, you can't act justly. Do you know why? Quran chapter 4 verse 129. This is what God says concerning having multiple wives, right? If you want to have an easy life, this is what God is advising you and I. He says, and you will never be able to act justly between what? Between the women. You will never be able. God never says you cannot. He says you will never be able. There's a difference between you cannot and you will never be able. So he says you will never be able to act justly between what? Women. Even if you desire, even if you want to act just, you can't. You even have one wife. Have you finished acting justly with her? So how much more multiple wives? Then God says, so do not be partial, right? Entirely by inclined to leave her as if she is suspended. Like, you know, when people have multiple marriages, sometimes they abandon the other wife and they spend more time with the other wife. But if you reform and become pious, then indeed God is forgiving and merciful, right? We have people who can reform, who can try their best to do the good thing, just like the prophet had multiple wives. If it is totally impossible, God will tell you not to marry multiple wives, right? But the point is, you eventually make some mistakes as time goes on when you are married to multiple women. You see. So coming back to Quran chapter 4 verse 3 again, to explain the notion of the women mentioned there, is about the orphaned women. It's not just about any ordinary women that you have to go out there and marry 2, 3, 4. No. So, and if you fear that you cannot be equitable regarding the orphans, then marry whoever pleases you among the women. So that's the women which are the orphaned women. By 2s, by 3s, and by 4s. But if you fear that you cannot act justly, then what? Then 1. So as God is questioning you that you can never be able to act just, so the best option is to marry one wife, right? Then you marry one. Or those your right hands possess, meaning those you have oath, your oath possesses, then you can marry from them, as mentioned in Quran chapter 24 verse 33, right? Then God says that is the least that you will not deviate. If you don't want to deviate, listen to the instruction God is giving you. That is the best advice. Yeah. So that is the answer to that question concerning the orphaned women, right? In that verse, who have their properties given to somebody who has to take care of them, and that person, if you know he cannot act just, then he should marry them and take care of them. Yes, Mohammed Patel, it's not about making a video. It's about, if you have another view, I can open the line here. You can come hop on, right? I can allow, join me and give your point here. Let's see how consistent you are. I don't see your name here. I could have sent you the request to join, right? Anyways, I've done almost 2 hours. The truth matter, I see you are here, but you came late. But anyways, this video will be on YouTube tomorrow, God willing. I think 2 hours is fair enough so that I can get some rest. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If anything I've missed, I guess next time we'll continue with that, in case I missed something. Right? But other than that, this is where I have to bring the topic to an end. Yes, you can listen to the replay. It will be on YouTube.